Welcome back to another episode of Dragons on the Wall, IGN's Game of Thrones show. We are here to talk about the Queen's Justice, a very, very exciting episode of Game of Thrones. But first, some spoiler-free housekeeping. First of all, I want to say a huge thank you to our colleagues in Australia, Lucy and Tristan, for an amazing episode last week. They covered for us because Joshua and I were coming back from Comic-Con. We didn't have equipment in this room. We wouldn't have been able to film. So they were amazing for subbing in. I hope you all enjoyed some guest hosts. Also, you'll notice next to me is not Eric Goldman, my typical co-host for Dragons. It is instead the amazing Joshua Yale, who I should say shares a birthday with me, which happened to be yesterday, and it all ties together because that episode was crazy.
Happy birthday.
Happy birthday. Quite the gift. Eric, actually, this is some sad news. I don't know if you guys saw on social media, but he is no longer with IGN after 11 amazing years. He's contributed so much leading IGN's TV coverage. He's moved on to Marvel, which, if you know Eric, is like the most fitting place for him to work, and he's going to be doing a lot of amazing work there. But in his stead for the rest of the Dragons on the Wall season, Joshua will be my co-captain, and I'm really excited about it.
Yeah. Eric's watch has ended, and now I have taken the black and gray.
And gray. Who's your favorite Game of Thrones character before we dive into spoilers?
Oh my gosh.
Putting you on the spot.
Pressure. I really like Brienne of Tarth.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
And Littlefinger. You're actually a big supporter of Littlefinger.
I don't love him, I'm not rooting for him, but when he's on screen, I'm like, ooh, he's up to something.
Yeah, well, there's plenty to talk about this season for sure. Okay, so we'll now that we have the housekeeping out of the way, we will dig into spoilers for this episode. So consider this your spoiler warning. Also, I'm going to say earlier in the episode, if you enjoy Dragons on the Wall, which you should because we're awesome, make sure to like and subscribe and give us good ratings and everything that goes along with supporting the show because that helps us keep making it. All right, so first, the big thing that we've been waiting, 25 years for it to finally happen ever since George wrote the first book. Jon Snow and Daenerys Targaryen finally met. Did it live up to your high expectations?
It's from a plot perspective, it really did, and I wasn't really sure if she was going to have it with all this stuff that he was bringing, asking for all this help, and she's like, what do I need your help for? And for a while I thought that, things weren't going to go well for Jon Snow, but they actually came to an understanding of sorts in the end, but it was a lot to get there. Really long scene, they really dug into it, but I will say that I don't feel like, as far as Emilia Clarke's acting went, I didn't think that she quite brought it. I was kind of waiting for something a little more the entire time from her, and I didn't quite get it. But it's still very cool, very interesting, really awesome to see, and it's going to really change the plot a lot. But it didn't quite blow my mind.
It's funny because you take a lot of issue with Emilia's acting, and this is something we've talked about a lot. I actually really disagree. I thought that her performance was incredible here, and one of the things that I thought was most interesting about it is when Jon and Davos enter the throne room, he is seeing Dany from Jon Snow's perspective, and we as the audience so frequently have seen Dany from Daenerys Targaryen's perspective. And what's so interesting about getting these new characters to meet who we've been following for seasons finally come together is she looked like a crazy person, and I think that she played it well. And at the same time, we see Jon being like, hey, ditch everything you've spent the past 6 seasons working toward and come help me, even though you have no reason to know who I am. Trust me, you've never heard of me, even though I've heard of you. And it was really interesting coming together. Going into this episode, I kept saying to friends, I was like, it's either going to open with Jon and Dany meeting or close with Jon and Dany meeting, and we'll get a full episode later. I'm really glad it wasn't a brief meeting and they parted and went their separate ways, that we get them together and he's still on Dragonstone. They're still going to spend some time together. And I also, talking with people before the episode saying, how do you think it's going to go? So many people I talked to were like, oh yeah, she's definitely just going to go and help him. Why wouldn't she? And I was like, why would she? I think that he's going to ask for all these things and she's going to say no. And I love that Tyrion was sort of the person to say, what's a reasonable thing to ask? Okay, Dany, here's a reasonable thing he asked.
Yeah, he's still teaching her. He's very wise Tyrion counsel. And I will say it was great to see her from Jon's point of view. He walks in,
love that set too.
Intimidating throne, right? And just this young woman with silver hair and fancy dress, and just who's has dragons and
the dragon reaction scene was so good, so good.
Right, that just him walking into that, I was like, holy crap! I really felt for Jon in that. How am I going to convince this to help me, right? This foreign invader, this Targaryen, which Targaryen in the world of Game of Thrones is essentially like saying like a nuclear bomb, you know?
Yeah.
Like, let me go rationalize with this nuke.
And I love how much history was brought up here too. Actually, going off what you were saying about Jon walking into that room and seeing Daenerys Targaryen, Kit Harington made an interesting comment to Entertainment Weekly in a follow-up interview where he was saying, you know, he never expected to walk into this room and see a beautiful young woman his age. Like, it's again something we've sort of learned and taken for granted, but Jon wouldn't know this is who Daenerys Targaryen is. So that's interesting. The other thing is how much history came back about Jon bringing up how the Mad King killed his grandfather and his uncle, and also Reddit caught this line that Daenerys's quote about saying, "I hope you wouldn't judge a daughter for the sins of her father," ties directly back to the premiere of this season when Jon is talking about the Karstarks and the Umbers and says, "I won't judge a son and daughter for the sins of their parents." So there is that interesting through line that these people have learned a lot from the mistakes of their father, Jon from Ned as well, and how they move forward from that and hopefully end up being allies is exciting to see. Before we get to the one thing they didn't talk about, I want to ask, do you ship it? Do you ship Jon and Dany? Do you want to see them end up together in a romantic sense?
I do not.
I don't either.
Okay. I'm glad we're seeing eye to eye on that. Yeah, I get a lot of people, they want to see it, but here's the thing. A lot of it, it's like the incestuousness of it. And she is...
Well, we don't know.
Theory,
it's not canon.
The theory is that she might be Jon's aunt.
Yes.
So, but
I'm wearing the shirt of that theory right now, which I purchased for last season.
Then you know. So if that's correct, but I'll say this, that the Targaryens have a long history of keeping their bloodline pure and doing it with each other. So it actually wouldn't be too far off base.
Yeah, there's a popular theory too
that
that you know, we know that Dany cannot have children based on previous seasons, but there is this prophecy, you know, and the sun rises in the east and sets in the west, blah, blah, blah. Book readers, you know what I'm talking about from Miri Mazdur. But maybe Jon will be the person to, you know, have her produce.
I just don't see romance for them, especially because Jon already had his like one great love. He lived, he died, and now he's back to fulfill a purpose. I don't think it's to knock boots. You know what I mean? Like, I don't think there's romance there. And very much for Dany, she's not really an emotional person anymore, especially when she came to Dragonstone in the first episode. It was huge for her to be there and be on with the place she was born, to come home to Westeros, but she wasn't like crying or anything, right? She was like, I have a purpose, let's begin.
Yeah, shall we begin? I also, briefly before we touch on the last big topic of Dany and Jon, I forgot, because it's been since like season 2, that was Davos's home for so long. And then that line he says about Missandei when he's like, this place has changed a bit, like looking at all the Dothraki too. I was like, oh yeah, it must be, they didn't really lean too much into that, but it must be so surreal having Davos come back and be like, oh, now there are Targaryen banners again, instead of, you know, Stannis Baratheon's flaming heart. Just a nice little touch there. But so there was one big thing that as Davos was talking and sort of ranting at Dany,
Talking a little too much.
Maybe a little bit too much. Jon stopped him right before he made the comment about how Jon died and was resurrected. And also what he did get out was, you know, he took a knife in the heart for this. And Dany brings it up again to Tyrion. She's like, do you know what the deal with this is? Why do you think, Joshua Yale, that Jon didn't want Daenerys to know about his resurrection?
I think because he's already bringing a really weird thing of like the Walking Dead men, by the way, new Game of Thrones spinoff, are on the way to kill us. You need to abandon everything and deal with this supernatural threat. Although you're saying this to a woman with dragons, and she even admits that, of just like, oh, I have dragons. Maybe we should re-examine what we think we know. But I think it was just, that's a little too much, I think, to throw on somebody. It also calls sort of him into question, I think, and just sort of like, what's his deal? And I don't think you want to get too much into that. But she was very intrigued by that. In fact, I think that she brings it up later to Tyrion, and I think that is part of what helped her sort of invest in Jon Snow and be like, okay, maybe I can trust him. Let me give him something and try and work with him a little bit. I think that was part of it, of that intrigue of what's going on, because she had herself an experience where she should have died.
The Unburned.
When she became the Unburned, right? And she walked into the fire and came out with 3 dragons. She didn't literally die and come back, but she was reborn like a phoenix, like a dragon phoenix, right?
Yeah.
So I feel like Jon went through that too, and she senses like a kinship there, like, oh, maybe I relate to him. Maybe we have more in common than I thought.
I don't know that I think that she went sort of that far and like, oh, do we have something in common? But I think seeing the passion that Davos spoke of Jon definitely helped change her mind. It is interesting to me though, like the popular theory I've seen on the internet is he sounds like a crazy person anyway. Let's not add resurrection on top of it. But we know that Dany, like, you know, knows about the Lord of Light and has spoken to and has the support of the Red Priest and Volantis as well. So it was an interesting thing for me to remain a secret. I'm also surprised that the lore and like story of Jon Snow's resurrection hasn't spread far and wide across Westeros. That of all things that people know, they don't know that. So I'm really curious. I'm curious if that has a bigger role to play, and maybe if Daenerys does find out this one last big secret about Jon, that, you know, puts a piece in place for her, like in this big puzzle of taking over Westeros that makes sense. I'm very intrigued that they left that open and didn't lay all those cards out on the table.
Yeah, I have to talk about something next episode.
I know, and I'm so glad that he's still a Dragonstone. I'm glad that they did end up on the right foot where she's saying, okay, yes, I will give you the resources to mine this dragon glass, which we know, as we know that the Night King is out there, will be very useful. And I also want to say I'm really pleased that this season, with the exception of Bran's Flash sideways, whatever, Vision in the premiere, hasn't had a huge presence from the Night King and the White Walkers. I'm glad that it's very much focused on the small children's problems of who's going to rule Westeros, and hopefully in the back half of the season and going into season 8, the final season, it'll have a lot more of that. Exciting stuff. Ooh. Exciting stuff. Speaking about petty children squabbles, let's shift over to the Mad Queen Cersei. Whew. She knows how to get herself excited, doesn't she? And torture is the way to go. What did you make of this scene with Ilaria? Did you have sympathy for Ilaria as this horrible, monstrous thing is happening to her for the sake of Cersei's revenge?
Well, here's the thing. The Game of Thrones is a nasty game, and it gets personal real quick. And these are both mothers with children, and they know how to hurt the other the most, and they did that. And it's weird, as the scene was happening, I was sort of like, I was a little on Cersei's side. Like, I'm not saying, like, again, not that I'm rooting for her. I'm just like, she's awesome, and I love her. But it's like, she's a great character, and she's really going in on that. That's some crazy torture. Like, I poisoned your daughter in front of you the same way you poisoned my daughter. Yeah. And you're going to sit here, we're going to make you live, you're going to force the food down your throat so you can watch her die, and you'll just be in this cell forever, until your daughter is bones. That's great.
It's crazy, and it's interesting. I was sort of with you as well, because like Ilaria is not a character I've really, ever since like season 4 when she was introduced and we all loved her because we love the Red Viper, like, if I was to use the B word on a podcast, which I can't do it on on an IGN show, I would use it about Ilaria. And I hope that sort of like that was like a mic drop, and maybe we circle back to her in season 8, but I don't necessarily need more of Dorne and the Sand Snakes. I think that was a really nice way to end it. But I think that if there's anything we learned from this episode, it's that Cersei spent a lot of time thinking about how to torture and kill her enemies, and also that she's smart, like more so than in the books. Cersei Lannister is her father's daughter, and she's smart, and she might be mad, and she might be evil, and she might be vindictive, but she can get stuff done, and this was the right way to do it. She's been playing Euron the right way. She's been playing her brother the right way, and she comes out on top. Like, she's in the lead by the end of this episode.
Speaking of coming out on top, so her and Jaime...
I was on top. There was like, some nice more to incest for us to enjoy this episode.
My goodness. And she's like, I don't even care. I'm queen now. I can get it, and everyone can watch.
I could not believe that a bit. That she's just owning it so much, and that people just have to deal with it. At this point, I guess we see that, you know, King's Landing has sort of come back around to cheering for her and the people she has supporting her, that they bring the evil Dornish people who murdered their beautiful princess and these awful, like, pillaging Greyjoys through the streets, even though she's allying with these, like, truly devious allies. I think it's just really interesting the way the tides have sort of shifted on Cersei. As, you know, as Jaime says later in the episode, if Cersei ends up on top and, like, there is peace, or at least some, you know, success in the country after all these horrible things happen, no one's going to be thinking about how she did these things.
Yeah, like we didn't like that septa anyways.
Yes.
The Sept of Baelor, that's fine.
I do want to talk a little bit about Jaime, though, now that we've talked about Cersei sort of rising to the top. What did you make of Jaime's role in Cersei's sort of, following here, her posse? And do you think that the revelation, we'll talk about the Olenna of it all in a bit, but the revelation that he finds out that Tyrion, his brother, who he's come to sort of hate, I don't know, hate, but at least be on the other side of supporting Tyrion, didn't actually kill Joffrey? That was a very long, wordy question.
So we're going to talk about
Jaime. Let's talk about Jaime.
The Jaime of it all. The question is sort of, will that knowledge change how he thinks about Cersei and
well, Cersei's behaviors change how he views Cersei.
I feel like with the loss of her children, Cersei has become kind of like Dany in a way. She's like very emotionless. She's got really no more humanizing qualities or things around her. And I feel like that's going to start to wear on Jaime, who is on her side and is doing bad things, I suppose. But you can kind of root for him and be okay with what he's doing. You kind of see he's not doing it to be vindictive. He's doing it to ensure his family survives and for the betterment of the realm, maybe even. But so I'm not sure if that. I'm not sure how that will impact their relationship, but I could see it of it being an unwinding of Cersei just hates Tyrion and will blame everything on him just to watch him die. She doesn't want Tyrion around. She's never liked him, and so I feel like that Tyrion might be what splits them and makes Jaime go against Cersei.
Yeah, Olenna has that line where she's like, "Make sure Cersei knows I killed her son." And I very much look forward to Cersei's reaction to that, because I think that she has spent her whole life hating Tyrion, hating him, and for her to blame him for, him and Sansa for Joffrey's death, for, sort of the unwinding, for killing her father, for coming back to their soil and taking their home with this awful, more beautiful queen. I don't think that will change her perception of Tyrion. I think she'll come up with excuses or whatever.
She'll find and any other reason to hate him.
But I think it will change Jaime, because Jaime, we were talking about this a little bit earlier, he did let Tyrion go, but then Tyrion killed their father, and Cersei hasn't stopped lording it over him ever since. She's like, our brother, who you love so much, is here with freaking Daenerys Targaryen and trying to take this country from us. You did this. I'm very intrigued to see. I felt like Eric and I talked about this every week too, where we kept being like, Jaime will turn on her now. No, now. And clearly he loves her more than ever. But I
think
want
that's
to see
a
that
season
splintering.
finale kind of moment, though. I wonder if we're going to build towards sort of a rupture in House Lannister.
Oh, yeah, and that's the other thing too. And we'll talk a little bit about Tyrion versus Jaime's battle strategies, but Cersei's doing pretty well for herself so far, and she has her dragon-killing crossbow, whatever. That's still, if Dany gets on her dragon, Dany has that line where she's like, "Oh, well, they can't take down a dragon," and Tyrion and Missandei are like, "Oh, but what about you? You're still important." But we know that they can potentially take down a dragon.
They got that. They're gonna load that up and start shooting some. It's dragon season.
It's dragon season, our favorite season. There are two big showdowns around keeps in this episode. Two keeps that we haven't seen before, Casterly Rock and Highgarden. How did you think what did you think of how they played out those two sieges?
So here's the thing. First of all, just as a personal point of view, I've wanted to see Casterly Rock so bad, because I talk about it all the time. All the Lannisters are from there. It seems very important, and there's a lot of things you hear about it. It's like, oh, are the dungeons filled with gold and everything? And no, I don't think so. But so it was cool to finally see those places and get a bit of an action scene there with Grey Worm storming the castle with everything. I thought it was smart not to make it a huge episode-long siege or something like that, because it really shows that we are approaching the end of Game of Thrones, to where huge battles like this are something that you can actually skip over to just get to the cool conversation that the leaders have at the end, right? So, and with Highgarden, that was another place we'd never seen before. Very cool to see that happen. And really, they skipped the entire thing and went right to the end, to the juicy part. And I'm okay with that. And I thought it was cool. And it's actually really awesome to see this in country going at war, and then we're just going through it just like that, and getting
huge leaders and houses are falling. The Martells have fallen, the Tyrells have fallen, the Freys have fallen. We're running out of like pieces on a chessboard. No, I fully agree with you. And actually, David Benioff and Dan Weiss, if you guys didn't watch the like inside the episode breakdown, spoke a little bit about how they decided, it's far more interesting to get to the Jaime and Olenna sitting down and having that amazing conversation versus watching another siege. And I did really like how they had Tyrion sort of narrate his expectations, and then we see the reality of that siege. It's frustrating to see Tyrion fail, to see Daenerys fail, but it is a really nice touch that Jaime, who is so well seasoned as a warrior and as a battle commander, much more seasoned than Tyrion Lannister, get the one up on his brother. Like, very fitting, very
brother
appropriate.
versus brother.
But I love that, that Jaime anticipated Tyrion going after Casterly Rock and was like, we don't need it. We need Highgarden. That's a better, place for us to steal. And
got
they
the
got
resources, got that money.
They got the money. They got
Bravos come knocking on the door. Got to pay the man.
Exactly. And they had that line earlier in the season too, where they're like, Highgarden is the most well-stocked place, and Sansa has that line too, like, oh, we don't have enough grain to last winter. It was very smart and strategic, and I'm glad that there have been scenes where Tyrion is like, oh, I'm sulking because I'm misjudged Euron, and I'm sure he'll be sulking that he misjudged Jaime as well.
Yeah, when he was with Tyrion was when he was planning the battle and moving kind of the pieces around in the beginning. It did sound like, oh, that's a really good plan, but yeah, he didn't account for what his enemy would be doing and the moves they would be making. Like when you play chess, you have to think of both, pieces. Actually, this episode kind of felt like a chess game because I don't know if you guys have ever played chess. I'm assuming you have, but like you used to, you can move a pawn 2 places. You used to only move it once, but they're like, this is kind of boring. Let's speed it up. Let's have the pawn be able to jump 2 spaces. And that's what happened in this episode is they just jumped ahead of those battles to get to the good stuff later on.
Yeah. I'm very excited to see how it all shakes out moving forward. Before we get to the big climactic ending of this episode, there was a small scene that seems to be a very important scene. 2 characters who I guess have never met, Varys and Melisandre, but 2 of the most influential characters on the show, finally meet, and it doesn't go super well.
Yeah, both like, you gonna die. Oh, you gonna die.
Well, I think it's like so interesting. We've seen Varys meet Red Priest before, and he's not a fan.
No.
Hard pass for him.
Pass.
He's like, GTFO, like, leave, lady. But Melisandre's comment to him about how I'm going to Volantis, but I'm gonna come back and I'm gonna die. And he's like, haha. And she's like, no, you're gonna die too. We're getting to the end. That seems like a prophecy to me. Do you think that is definitely going to happen the way she sort of said?
I think it is going to happen. Although I wouldn't put too much investment, especially how we've seen how poor her visions of the future have turned out. That seemed like a very grim foretelling, and I feel like there's going to be some truth to it. And to see, those are 2 huge characters, huge influencers, both who have influenced the show in very different ways, one through like a supernatural means, and one through very like practical means of like spies and networks and information. And so to hear that both of them are going to be meeting their end in Westeros before the end, that's crazy. Varys is one of my favorite characters.
He's so good.
Him and Littlefinger, I just feel are sort of playing. They're actually the true like game players. If there's a chessboard, they're the ones moving the pieces.
Especially toward the beginning.
Yeah, it seemed less going on, but I still feel like they're so influential, both of those characters, and especially Varys. So to hear that his head might be on like the chopping block is crazy.
Well, I love that Melisandre acknowledged that she's made terrible mistakes. Who knows, maybe she's making a mistake here too, but I wonder if she's seen something in the flames, and specifically something that like they're gonna die, it's like, gonna be connected
maybe
somehow.
Together.
Yeah.
That would be messed up for Varys to have to die with a Red Priest after what they did to him.
I just found that scene so interesting because we're at that point in fantasy stories when if someone like Melisandre says, yo, I'm gonna die and you're gonna die, that's gonna happen. And again, we only have like 10 episodes of Game of Thrones left. Even whenever season 8 premieres, like, for her to say something like that, it feels like prophecy. It feels like it will happen. We just don't know how it will happen. And that makes me sad because I don't want to get to the end of Game of Thrones. But also, like, even though, this isn't a happy story, George R. R. Martin has long said it's going to have a bittersweet ending, which to me means a lot of characters we love are going to die. I don't want to see people like Varys and Melisandre die who've been with us since the beginning or near beginning.
And I wonder if because it's rare to see Varys, like, look shook. And he looked shook. I wonder if it's going to affect how he plays the game from now on. He's like, shoot, my time's running out. Or maybe he's going to try to avoid dying. Like, will this affect how he counsels Dany? Will this cause her to make a rash decision based on his counsel? I don't know. It's going to be crazy.
Yeah, if you guys have theories, we definitely want to hear them. So hit us up and let us know. Save the best and saddest for last. Bye, Olenna. Bye, Queen of Thorns. I want like really like sad, like, you know, retrospective music to start playing right now. I don't think there have been few characters who've come on Game of Thrones and just immediately commanded the screen in the way she has, and to have her take such ownership of her death, to chug that poison and then drop the mic and be like, oh, this is how I'm going to die. Great, cool. I'm dying. You can't even kill me now. If you want to, that's fine. I'm dying already, but I killed your son. It's like, I love her. I love her. And she's one of your favorite characters as well, right?
Yes. The Queen of Thorns laying down the verbal smackdown again and again and again on everyone. She always ends a scene the winner because she's just so witty and so smart, so funny, and has been such an influential character throughout, and a huge player. Like, she killed Joffrey. That was a huge turning point in the show, all thanks to her. And now, her time is over. The rose has wilted and rotted and other plant metaphors. But what a way to go.
Yeah, and we lose some of these characters and just the hole that they leave can never be filled. And I feel like she's a character like that. It is very tragic that she's the last of the Tyrells. And I feel like when Marjorie and Loras died last season, she knew she's not going to last that much longer, but still nice to see her sort of go out on her own terms, even though I will miss her very, very much.
Mm-hmm. Man, and the look on Jaime's face when she said that.
So that's really interesting to me. Olenna's revelation to Jaime, something that we knew as the audience, but they didn't know, that she killed Joffrey, reminds me that there are a lot of mysteries like that and secrets that either the audience knows or doesn't know, but that the characters on the show don't know. And with characters like Bran, who we're going to talk about a little bit, coming back and having that knowledge and those secrets, there aren't too many left, those secrets to be revealed, but they will be game-changing when they come out. This being one of them, R plus L equals J, who is Jon Snow's father. Let's talk a little bit about Bran's return to Winterfell and the fact that the first thing he said is like, hey, is Jon here? I gotta talk to Jon. What do you think about three-eyed? No, seriously.
Rude.
I know. She's like,
My
hi,
goodness.
Hi, it's me. I'm happy. What did you think about Sansa and Bran's reunion?
I mean, obviously it was a weird reunion because she's like, oh my God, it's Bran. He's like, sup, where's Jon? You know?
Yeah.
So, and he's completely monotone. And he wasn't like that before, but now that he's become the three-eyed raven, I feel like it's really like mellowed him out. And he's like, I am all seeing and stuff. So as far as the reunion goes, it was just like a weird one, but I think just a lot of weird things have happened to him and her since they've last seen each other. But it was cool to see two Starks together again. It's always a notable thing because really the show started when they splintered and now they're coming back together.
I got a bit verklipped. I'm not going to lie.
Oh, really?
You were? I was like...
I was too... Yeah, that's nice that it worked for you.
Well, I realized when they were like, there's someone at the gate, and I was like, it's Bran, it's Arya or Bran, it's Bran, and then it was, and I was like, oh my God.
Yeah, I don't know why it took him a whole episode to get from the wall to them.
Listen,
but anyways.
He's moving in a sled. He can't go as fast as Jon on those calm seas.
Right. So, yeah, but let's talk about what it means to have someone like Bran with the powers of the three-eyed raven on her side.
Well, is the three-eyed raven on anyone's side is the other question.
That's a good question.
Because it is, I mean, I talked to Isaac Hempstead, right, who plays Bran, a little bit before this season. He did say, becoming the three-eyed raven changes Bran. If Bran had just had those powers, he might show up and be like, hey, so here's secret 1, secret 2, secret 3, like, let's send a raven to Jon, here's the deal. But he's not. He's something else, someone else now, to quote Arrow. And I think that is really interesting because we as the audience want him to go boom, 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 here's everything you need to know, but he's seeing everything all at once. He's trying to piece it out, and will he reveal those secrets, and will Littlefinger, a keeper of many secrets, feel a bit concerned that Bran is there and could reveal all to Sansa, who he's still trying to manipulate.
Yeah, I will say one thing. Sansa looks like she's a great leader. She's really smart, and she's redecorating.
She knows that leather is important.
But I wonder if she's still a little naive that she's leaning on Littlefinger. And I feel like she's going to reveal that, yeah, Bran saying he's the three-eyed raven and knows all, sees all, to someone like Littlefinger, that is a problem. He who has conspired in secret and done so many horrible things against the Starks and against her personally, and for the fact that Bran could put that out on the table, that makes Bran a #1 enemy to Littlefinger all of a sudden. I'll also say that, what was I gonna say?
Well, I think Littlefinger's warning to Sansa too about like fight every battle all at once.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say.
I was like, is that bad or good? I can't tell. That seems like good advice, but everything Littlefinger said seems to be evil.
I actually thought it was very evil, like thinking, right? Because only an evil person would think that way. But I thought it was so cool because you finally get an idea of how he's so prepared, how he's always 10 steps ahead, and how he's sort of playing this like shadow game. He's playing the Game of Thrones at all times. And I just can't wait for someone to make the meme. It's probably already out there of like, all like the advanced math and trigonometry floating like in front of the face of him just every game at every time, every battle.
Little like house sigil.
Yes, like so that's huge. But also it's funny that he said that to her. And then she went and met somebody who actually is seeing and experiencing all things at all times.
And she seems shook.
So it's like maybe she won't need Littlefinger once she kind of gets Bran to be useful.
So I want to talk about, we were talking about unresolved mysteries. I want to talk about one in particular, but here is my warning to say that I'm going to be pulling on some scenes that were shown in the preview for next week's Game of Thrones. So we can call those spoilers. Maybe it's a little bit of theories and a little bit of connecting the dots. But this is my warning. If you don't want to know, this is the end of the show anyway, so if you don't want to know about what might be coming up next, totally understand if you want to tap out now and you can catch us on the next one. So that's a big, long spoiler warning. But speaking of unresolved mysteries, one mystery the show has never addressed is who sent the assassin to try to kill Bran all the way back in season 1. And the reason why this is important now is there was, it's called a Catspaw assassin, because the person who went had this very unique looking dagger that's been known as the Catspaw dagger since then. And we last saw it when Catelyn Stark took it to King's Landing and confronted Littlefinger about it, and Littlefinger said that's Tyrion Lannister's dagger, and that is why Catelyn took Littlefinger hostage and captured him and blah, blah, blah. So Littlefinger has the dagger. We know that. He's the last person to have it back in season 1. Why is this important now? Well, number one, back in, I guess it was the premiere episode, Samwell Tarly is looking at a book, learning about Valyrian steel, and that dagger specifically was in the book. And everyone was like, we know that dagger. We saw it back in season 1. We're eagle-eyed Game of Thrones fans. Why does it remain important? Well, in the preview for next week's Game of Thrones, we see a character holding the dagger, and there are a couple of different shots of different persons. You can't see who's holding it specifically, but based on the rings on their finger and sort of like the lining of their sleeve, it's very clear that it's Littlefinger who last had the dagger, still having the dagger. Well, why is that important? Because additionally, I love this. They like are
keep it
laying
going,
clues.
Sarah. Keep it going.
In the Entertainment Weekly cover image showing Arya Stark, she has the dagger on her. So at some point, Arya is going to get the dagger. I think that this is important, Joshua and everyone watching, because the show, even though the books revealed who did send the assassin, the shows have not, and they could choose someone different, and I think that person could be Littlefinger. If not, I think Bran has so many secrets about Littlefinger that maybe Littlefinger is going to want to go and like try and kill Bran or something to try and keep him quiet, because like Olenna reveals a secret about Joffrey and it changes everything for Jaime, a lot of the things that Littlefinger has done, if they're out, can change the way that Sansa views him, can change the way that he could lose his life over it. So that is my big theory about the Catspaw. Have you noticed that this is something that's been brought up again? Why do you think this dagger is having such a spotlight shown on it to be important later?
I'm going to pull a Davos and go with a short answer and just be like, I didn't really think about any of that.
I think it's so interesting, and I love that there are these little Easter eggy things that the showrunners can pull back and say, here's a callback to season 1, but we're going to bring it back in a big way. It's Valyrian steel as well, so it's important, and especially if Arya can get some Valyrian steel, that would be great. We also in the promo see that she is standing in front of Winterfell, which means maybe it's finally time for her to return and cause some havoc. too.
You guys just got, this is what it's like actually being in an office with Terry when you have a desk right next to her and she's just like spouting off all this Game of Thrones knowledge, like encyclopedic knowledge. And actually it would be cool if people could do that meme for you and just have all the trigonometry and stuff around your face as you're like spinning this giant theory about this dagger and everything.
You said you haven't thought about the cat spot dagger as much as me, but I will ask you, do you think
Not even a little bit as much.
Do you think that we could be near the end for Littlefinger, or do you think he has one last great trick up his sleeve?
Oh, I like him so much. He's so cool. And I feel like he has a larger role to play. I kind of see him as being so resourceful that he might like stick it out till at least the final season.
I think that he's someone like Melisandre who has been sort of on like bot time right now with Sansa, and something's going to happen. He's going to have to go somewhere. No one wants him around except for him wanting to be around, so I think that it's time for a shakeup, whether it's his death, I agree, I think it's a little bit too soon, or him getting kicked out and still doing something somewhere else. Well, if you guys stuck around that long, then we definitely want to know your theories about the cat spa dagger. Why is it important? Why do we keep seeing it? Let us know in the comments below. That's our show, Joshua. Thank you so much. You've been an excellent co-host, even though you were the B team last season.
I was.
You were the A team in my heart.
Promotion. Oh, thank you,
A team in my heart.
Stop.
If you guys enjoy Dragons on the Wall, please, as I said earlier, like and subscribe and give us a good rating everywhere you like to watch. We're going to be continuing to go all season long, so check back in every Monday when we have these episodes up. And I also want to plug an excellent breakout from Lucy and Tristan last week where they explained Arya's "That's Not You" line to Nymeria, because it added a lot of great insight into something that I think confused a few people. So that's about it for us here on Dragons on the Wall this week. But for all things Game of Thrones, as always, keep it here on IGN.